Greetings travelers, what's up here? Just wanted to do a quick rundown of the rules of this challenge before we get into the video. We have 4 rules and 2 optional rules that I haven't decided on yet. Number 1, must be hardcore single player. Number 2, items don't count toward the Grail if it's not found on stream. 3, this is a single character run, meaning no extra socket quests from other characters or other characters for target farming. Number 4, if I die on the character, I must purge everything from my stash and my mules, and then I must reset my Holy Grail completely and start again. Optional rule number 1, players 8 only. This is one that I can't do on my current character, but I will consider if I do die. Optional 2, make every rune word in the game. I haven't decided if I want to do this rule yet, but if you'd like to see me do it, make sure to leave a comment on the video. If you're enjoying the Kaizo Grail, make sure you subscribe to follow my adventure into madness. Thank you, now on to the video. I'll be back again with the Kaizo Grail runs. Today we are looking into the idea of getting some starter gear and moving into Hell. Quick rundown of the plan. First, Nightmare Pendle my way to 65 and then head into Hell Countess. We started at players 4 Pendle and quickly gained some levels into our 60s. We had a few hiccups along the way, but it was going rather smooth. By smooth, I mean I was killing like a butter knife was trying to cut into a well-done steak. We did have a few drops during our Nightmare Pendle that needed to be recorded. I had a bunch of less interesting Grail finds that I can mark off my list. And it starts with the Arctic binding. Even in normal, this belt is very lacking. It has to be upped just to make it viable to wear, even in normal. The +4 belt slots is just not good. It's pretty troll if you ask me. But even with this troll gear plaguing our minds with disappointment, the next trap surprised me. I honestly didn't expect to get a limb rune in Nightmare Pendle, on players 4 for that matter, but I think this spent a lot of my luck for the day. Pendle gave me a few unlocks after that mostly just spammed me with a bunch of useless stuff. Sanders 1 was the next item that had no purpose in my life. So then Pendle thought, you know, what would go really lovely with the Arctic belt? How about some Arctic mitts? Yes, I know it has IAS on it. It has to be useful, right? Right? Soon after, we got our levels and found a Cliff Killer bow and a Death Spade. Both pretty useless. This was it. This was my time to go to Hell and get my runes from the Hell Countess. So we set our players to 1 and prepared ourselves for the really long fights. But I had my eyes on the Countess. It started with the den, and honestly, it went really well. I was surprised how well my mercenary was going, considering the lack of gear he was wearing. He still died some. After the den was me heading straight to the underground passage. It ended up bringing me back to my good tricks of getting lost again while thinking about what sorts of items I could make with my limb rune. I think the running theme of this entire video is going to be, yep, my weapon broke. Time to go back to town. I swear, this might be the worst part about the Barbarian. My weapons are still lacking at this point. I'm still wearing a horrible malice in my offhand, but I saw a light at the end of the tunnel that could potentially save me from this. The Hell Countess could give me an IO rune. After daydreaming of the runes this whole time, I got slapped back down to reality after having to leave the game a couple times and lacking damage. So feeling demoralized and beaten, I headed back to Nightmare Countess. I really wanted an IO rune to make the black weapon. The crushing blow would make my life so much tolerable against bosses and unique monsters. So I began my descent into madness of the Nightmare Countess. I really was just looking for an IO rune to increase my damage some. I couldn't believe that I hadn't found one yet. But very quickly, only after 2 runs, it finally happened. The IO rune I was searching for finally dropped. I was trying to debate on which item I wanted to make while I was still doing Nightmare Countess. I had many options. I discussed a few of them in the last runs. I did want to make a black, or a bulwark, or a cure. Each one had their benefits. While I was debating on which one to make, I quickly found a new unlock. This was the Steel Class Shield. Pretty decent for a level 17 Paladin, but obsolete once you get your Spirit Shield. Part of the reason why I didn't choose to make the black first was because I didn't have a 3-socketed flail at the time, and was searching for it to make my black. I was considering using a hell rune on my malice, but I wasn't sure if I was going to keep as offhand. Also, if I put on the black flail, it wasn't going to solve one of my major problems that has been driving me nuts. My weapon constantly breaking. It requires me to go back to town way too often. It drives me bonkers. I ended up finding a new helmet for my mercenary. It wasn't great, but it was an upgrade. I got to mark it off my list, the glory helmet. The glory helmet has blind on hit. That could be very useful. Soon after I got that and finished the Countess, I decided I'd make the black. So I got myself a 3-socketed flail from Farah to make the black. With my new damage increase, I was very interested in going to hell now. Crushing blow is so important for melee, and now I have 40%. I felt like I had struck gold. So now I decided it's time to move from Nightmare Countess to Hell Countess. There was so many more runes I needed to obtain in so little time. Even with the new weapon, my descent into the tower was very slow and frustrating. I did find a new unlock on the way. White Stands Guard would have been much better if it had been a G-face in that same set, but I marked it off the list either way. Finally, I got to the Hell Countess for the first time. She didn't disappoint me with her drop. She rewarded me with a code rune and a key of terror. With time going by, minutes turned into hours. It was just me and the Countess over and over again. I really didn't get anything from there. It took me 40 minutes just to get one unlock, and it was Kleagol's Claw, the shield. This thing's useless. These runs took me over 5 minutes to do each time, and wasn't safe at all. I'm pretty much the Diablo version of the potato sack peasant at this point. So I did what most people do when they're stuck. I lowered the difficulty and went back to Nightmare to farm a little. I was needing bases, so I tried Nightmare Cows, and it didn't have any luck. Decided it probably wasn't worth my time to do cows. So I moved to Nightmare Diablo. Now I had Crushing Blow to speed it up. He rewarded me with my first kill with some new gloves, Venom Grip. These had 5% more Crushing Blow and 30% poison resistance. This was an upgrade. Well, until I get some good crafted gloves, hopefully. I thought since I got my revenge on Diablo, let's smash Bale as well. On the way down to him, I ended up getting to myself another unlock, the Humongous Axe. I sat there wishing this thing was a one-handed axe because it would actually be pretty decent if it was. But alas, it wasn't, and it's useless. I sent it to a magical place where all terrible uniques go when it's not very useful. I got my revenge on Bale for his crazy health pool, but I couldn't feel good about it because of how many times I broke my weapon in this run. I probably sound like a broken record with how often my weapon breaks, but I feel like this is a huge part of my adventure so far and really needs to be expressed the best way possible. After Bale, I thought, let's head back to Hell and finish up Act 1. Maybe I can get something off Hell Andy. I took the long walk to Catacombs, and along the way I found myself a new unlock. That could have been good, but alas, 25% magic find on the chances. It's just not worth using. Andy ended up being pretty easy with my normal chugging of absurd amounts of antidote potions, but she didn't give me anything. With the disappointment of lack of loot off of her, and how terrified I was of the beetles in Act 2, with my lightning resists being very close to negative, I decided to go back to Old Faithful and slam out Hell Countess a bunch. I really wanted to have both a bulwark and a cure for me and my mercenary. I was getting frustrated with the lack of useful drops at this point. It may take a while to do Countess runs, but at least the potential for decent upgrades through rune words is there for me. On the way down to the Countess, I was surprised with 2 new unlocks, Dark Adherent Armor and the Tanner Gorod. Surprisingly, they were both upgrades for my mercenary, and it really displays how down bad I am for new items. It finally happened though. I got a gold rune, well, near the Countess, and I got a new unlock, the General's Flail, off the Countess herself. The very next few runs actually was very beneficial drops for me. A white phase blade, which I rolled and got 3 sockets. This was very useful for whenever I went to make my Lawbringer. Right after the phase blade, I got an Io rune that I turned into a cure helmet for my mercenary. I also merged 3 hell runes together for another Io rune and made myself a bulwark. This was a really good series of events for my defense. But back to the goal rune, though. It really is not something I expected to get. I spent some time thinking about something that I can make with it, considering I can't even get a goal rune off the Countess rune set normally. My thought process came to the conclusion the Kingslayer might be the best option. There's not a ton of other options in general when it comes to the goal rune. The other I considered is the Death, and it wasn't 100% I could find a base for either of them. Death just seemed a little more out of my grasp, considering I'd have to have an F base and a Vex rune. Kingslayer requires a Maul and a Fall, since I already got an off my Nightmare Forge. It only requires a 4-socketed non-F base. Truthfully, I would make whichever I could get, but I assume that might take a while for either of them. After spending some time considering and mindlessly walking to the Countess over and over again, I happened to find another rune that was a surprise, an rune off a random mob on the way down. What? The monster around the Countess had been way more rewarding than her, that's for sure. My drops have been awful of her. This is actually my second rune in this run, and only consideration I had so far was to make a Kingslayer. Now I could consider maybe making a stone armor for myself or my mercenary. I did a few more runs of the Countess, and had a Seaverb's Ward drop. Well, that's a new unlock. And a Fall rune. The Fall rune was going to be very useful with making an Unbending Will or an Obedience, depending on what bases I got. I ended up getting a couple more IO runes and a new unlock, Colwyn's Point. Very useless, but unlocked. At this point, I'm not sure what I would do with the IOs, since I had most of the items I wanted. But I decided it might be useful once I get a better base for Bulwark rerolling for 15% DR. Finally finished up my runs on the Countess. Hopefully. Probably not. But for now, I thought might as well go back to Andy once more before I push my way through hell next time. I ended up getting a Lance of Yagi off of Andy to finish up my runs, a new unlock achieved. At this point, my biggest limiting factor is bases, which seems to be hard to get for me in general. In conclusion, I thought I'd be pushing my way through hell at this point, but reality came to slap me in the face. It really was an eye-opening experience playing single-player Barbarian for the first time without gear from other characters. I thought it was going to be a bad experience, but even comparing it to Melee Paladin and Melee Druid, this felt horrendous. I did learn quite a bit from this run so far. The Barb kills really slowly and makes the runs feel like an eternity, but you're also very tanky, and make your mercenary very tanky, even when they're wearing almost nothing. My weapon breaks almost as much as my soul does every time I go to repair it. Oh god, it's so bad. I realized that the Barb is probably the worst solo class in the game when you start from scratch. I think if I was going to level up the Barbarian again like this, I would rush to get crafted gloves for even 5% crushing blow. Every percent is worth its weight in gold for killing bosses. Next time though, we're going to try and get ourselves through hell finally. Maybe search for a few new items that I couldn't seem to get this time. Those items are going to be a search for a low rune and a maul rune for the grief, a lum rune for the smoke, a maul and a fall for Kingslayer, a pole and a maul for oath, and a Vex for death. These items will require several bases, including F bases for obedience and oath, and death. Right now, I'm having trouble finding any base at all. It's probably going to be the worst part about my runs so far is the lack of bases. But I got faith that in the future, we'll get some luck and things will turn around for me. Just have to keep grinding for those runes and get the terror zones unlocked next time. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time.